Here we go.
Perry Tarica has requested that his face not be displayed on TV. So that's the only request. If we do request the key to the camera crew to not record Mr. Tarica's face, I'd appreciate that.
How long is the testimony going to be?
Quite brief. I mean, I don't think his testimony will take very long. I mean, my direct examination might be 15 minutes.
All right, let's not try to show his face. It's only 15 minutes.
Well, my part, I don't know how long their part's going to be. My part will be 15 minutes or less.
Well, how about 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
Close. Don't hold us to that.
Okay, let's bring the jury out. Oh. And no photos either. Yeah.
Audio's fine.
Audio's okay.
Okay, so Perry Tarica is the man that Julie Jensen had the affair with. And apparently we don't get to see him. However, chat, we're going to show you what he looks like from 2008. We'll show you that during a break. Let me just pull this up, chat. Man, this is getting so good. Let me see if I can post that quick. Right, we can look them up, exactly. But that's all right, you know, witness protection, I guess, for whatever reason. Let me grab Perry Tarica here real quick. Show you guys. We didn't listen to his 2008 testimony in our marathon streams.
On the record, Mark Jensen, 2002 CF 314. The appearances are the same. The jury is back in the courtroom. Next witness for the state.
Let's say we call Perry Tarica to the stand.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony is meant to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Get as close as you can to that microphone. Spell your first and last name for the reporter.
Perry Tarica, Perrytarica.
Try to get closer to the mic, okay? Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Jamboys.
Thank you. And Mr. Tarica, did you know a person by the name of Julie Jensen?
Yes.
Could you please describe to the jury how you came to know Julie Jensen and when that happened?
I came to know Julie Jensen when she started working at Dean Witter.
And what year was that?
It's probably somewhere around 1990, give or take a year, maybe.
And you were working at Dean Witter at the same time?
I started before her. Her firm was a firm that she worked for went bankrupt, so their whole office integrated into Dean Witter. It was another firm.
So you were already there, and then she came in with this other group of people.
That is correct.
And how long did you work with Julie Jensen?
I would say maybe 2 years, maybe something like that.
And in the course of the 2 years that you were working with Julie Jensen, did you develop a friendship with her?
Yes, very close one.
And at some point, did that become a romantic relationship?
Yes.
And did that culminate at one point with a sexual relationship?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that. When did it become a sexual relationship, if you can recall?
I can't recall the timeline. It was after she had her child, maybe about a year after, somewhere around that time.
So David was about a year old?
Yes.
And you had one sexual encounter with her over a 2-day period?
That is correct.
And where did that take place?
At her home in Pleasant Prairie.
And now, at some point during the course of that time that you were with her for that 2-day period, I presume her husband, Mark Jensen, was away at that time?
Yes, he was.
And you, in addition to having sexual relations with her at that time, you were also talking with her and speaking with her?
Yes, yes, it was. Yes, we did.
And do you remember her showing you anything when you were at the residence?
Yes,
Tell the jury about that.
uh, I think it was on the Saturday, and she all of a sudden she went out to the garage, and then she came back, and she showed me a tape recorder, and she played it. She told me that Mark was tape recording her conversations on the phone because it was wireline back then. It wasn't cellular, from what I remember. And when she played the tape recording, there was one message on it, innocuous. It wasn't anything of any of any importance.
Now, is this something she had just found, or is it something she'd known about previously, or did she tell you?
I believe she knew about it previously, because she went right to it, and then she came in. I was surprised, but that and then I told her, make sure you put it back in this very same way she found it, because she played the recording. I had told her to make sure she gets it in the right spot, and she puts it back this very same way.
Now, and after that one episode of that one sexual episode, did you continue to have your relationship with Julie Jensen or not?
No.
What happened?
She called it off. I don't know for what she made a decision, and I accepted it.
So you accepted when she called it off?
Yes.
You are aware that the Jensens made numerous complaints to the police about hang-up phone calls and a pattern of harassment that occurred between 1992 and 1998. You're aware of that?
I'm aware of it. I was not aware of the dates. Okay, this is the first time I'm hearing about the dates, but I'm very much aware of it.
And how did you become aware of them?
Initially, I became aware of it. My boss at the time, at Dean Witter, had brought it up to me, and he said that there were things going on, and there were phone calls or whatever. He didn't go into a lot of detail, but he said there were. I reread correspondence that I had sent Julie, and in there it said that he had my previous boss at Dean Witter had said that he had looked at my phone records and saw that there were no phone calls going up to Julie's house at the time because they were concerned.
Just to hearsay.
Sustain.
So, and just to answer the question, you did hear that the Jensens were complaining about hang-up phone calls and a variety of types of harassment, and they were accusing you of doing that, correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
And your boss checked into it and found there were no
Judge, I would
unusual
again
phone
object
calls?
as to hearsay.
Well, it's his personal knowledge as to whether or not there were unusual phone calls coming from his phone.
I'm going to let that question in.
So your boss checked into it and determined there were no unusual phone calls on your phone. Is that true?
Absolutely, that is correct.
I'm going to show you this item that's been marked as Defense Exhibit 60. Have you had an opportunity to review Exhibit D60?
Yes,
And that includes some enclosures and then a letter. Is that true?
that is true.
And tell us about this letter.
I had sent it the letter to Julie's sister-in-law, and it was sent out of friendship and concern because I was concerned when I had heard.
Okay, we'll
yeah.
get to it.
Okay,
So this is a letter that you sent to Julie Jensen, care of Jill Griffin. Is that true?
that is correct.
And when did you send this letter, approximately, if you can remember?
The postmark is January 6th. I can't tell the year, but it was January 6th.
Do you know if it would have been 91 or 92 or something around that time?
It would have been, 91, 92 probably.
Now, in this letter, you address these accusations that you were leaving items around the house and making hang-up phone calls. Is that true?
Yes, I addressed that items around the house, and they said that their picnic table had been moved around. Things were moved around the place, and phone calls.
Now, in your letter, at the time you wrote this letter, these matters were still very fresh in your mind. Is that correct?
Yes, as far as what matters, I mean, that's like, yes, it was.
Okay. Particularly as compared to today, many years later, if you wrote this in 91 or 92, your recollection in 91 or 92 is better than your recollection is in 2023.
That is correct.
It's 30 years later.
Yes.
So I'd ask you to read that. First, I'll read it to yourself, and particularly starting with the paragraph about halfway down the first page that starts with the word name Ken Hammer.
Okay.
Just read that to yourself.
How far do you want me to go?
So who is Ken Hammer?
Ken Hammer was my previous manager at Dean Witter.
And who's Linda?
Linda was his executive assistant.
And they checked your calls
Yes,
and determined there was nothing unusual.
that is correct.
Now, you wrote, I can accept you thinking.
Judge, I would object as to hearsay.
It's a prior recorded recollection, Your Honor, and it's his statement at the time categorically denying that it had anything to do with any of these calls or letters or
It's coming in. Ask your question.
I just think he could ask the question instead of reading from the document.
Your objections for the record is preserved. Ask the question, Mr.
So
Janway.
you wrote, quote, I can accept your thinking and or believing I was making calls and sending letters because you wanted to believe Mark, and it could be possible. However, I did not. And I don't know who, although I have my suspicion. And who was it that you suspected was making these phone calls and leaving these things around the house?
Objection, speculation.
Was there an objection?
A speculation.
Overruled. Go ahead.
Who'd you suspect of doing this?
Oh, Mark, absolutely. She said Mark was weird and strange.
You wrote, I can tell you one thing. I have not been up in Kenosha after the last time I saw you. If someone said that they saw me and or my car, they are mistaken, and that is putting it in a gentlemanly manner. Is that what you wrote?
Yes.
And when you say that's putting it in a gentlemanly manner, what do you mean by that?
Well, I guess, I could have gotten angry and been upset, but I was being a gentleman and saying that it wasn't me.
And if you weren't being a gentleman, you would have said whoever said that was lying.
Absolutely.
Now, when you sent this letter, where were you living?
I was in an apartment in Niles.
in Niles, Illinois.
That is correct.
And then at some point after that, you moved from Niles, Illinois, correct?
That is correct.
Where did you move to?
North Carolina.
Now, how far is Niles, Illinois from Kenosha?
About an hour drive.
And then you moved to South Carolina or
North Carolina.
North Carolina. And how far is North Carolina from Kenosha?
About 14 hours.
And how long did you live in North Carolina?
To 97 or 98. 1997, 1998, somewhere around there.
So you moved to North Carolina in what year?
I think it was 92 or 3.
And you lived there until 97 or 98.
Yes.
Now, did you at any time ever make any hang-up phone calls to the Jensen residence?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever make any harassing or obscene phone calls to Mark Jensen's office?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever have access to or leave around the Jensen residence or Mark Jensen's workplace any obscene photos, particularly photos depicting a man's erect penis and a woman's face in close proximity there too?
Absolutely not.
Never, under any circumstances at any time.
Never.
Now you said that Julie ended the affair by, did she call you or tell you in person?
I wish I could remember. I believe it was in person, but I again,
I only want you to
Okay.
answer what you can remember. After she told you that she was terminating the affair, how much longer did she remain employed at that place?
I didn't even know that she quit. She just started not showing up. Nobody told me anything. She just wasn't there.
Well, how much time elapsed between the point
Almost
when she-
immediately, I think it was. Yeah, it was immediately. It was, yeah.
Did you want to continue this relationship with Julie?
Yes, I would have, but she did not want to.
So what kind of a person was Julie when you were dating her or going out with her? What are you
Objection,
doing with her?
relevance.
Overruled.
What kind of a person was she?
You want me? Okay. Julie was the kindest woman I have ever met in my life. She was a great mother. She loved children. Like I said, she was the finest woman I have ever known. And that was just a short period of time. And that was the opinion of many others, because it wasn't only my observation. It was the people that she had worked with previously. They all thought highly about her.
Thank you. Mr. Tarica, I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
Who's doing the cross?
I am.
Go ahead.
Krause. So, Mr. Tarica, I want to talk to you about that weekend that you spent in Kenosha. Okay?
I'm listening.
You went to the Jensen house for the weekend.
Pardon me?
You went to the Jensen house for the weekend.
Correct.
You initially thought that you might stay for dinner,
Correct.
but you ended up staying until Sunday.
Yes.
You knew that Mr. Jensen was out of town.
Yes.
And after dinner on Friday, Julie Jensen asked you to stay over.
Yes.
And she asked you to sleep with her in her marital bed.
Yes.
And you did.
Yes.
And you spent the entire weekend with Miss Jensen in that home.
Yes.
And as you testified on direct, you had a sexual relationship with her.
Yes.
And that was that weekend.
Yes.
And that include sexual intercourse with Miss Jensen.
Yes.
And it also include oral sex.
No.
It did not.
No.
Do you remember testifying previously in this case?
Yes.
Tony, today that you did not have oral sex with Miss Jensen?
I don't remember oral sex with her. No.
I guess my question is, do you not remember or it didn't happen?
Do I not remember or it didn't happen? I don't enjoy oral sex. So I would have put a stop on any type of oral sex.
All right. So you remember having sexual intercourse with Miss Jensen?
Yes.
And that same weekend, their child was also in the home,
Yes.
and that was David Jensen.
Yes.
And he would have been, what, around 1 year old?
Yes. Somewhere around there.
And you actually brought toys for David Jensen,
Correct.
and you spent time with him.
Yes.
After that weekend and that sexual relationship, she broke it off with you.
Yes.
And that was a day or two later.
Probably.
She told you not to contact her anymore?
Correct.
She told you not to tell anyone about the weekend you had together?
Correct.
And it was very sudden when she broke off this relationship.
Correct.
You were shocked that she didn't want to continue the relationship.
I don't know if the word shocked is the right word. I accepted what she said.
Disappointed?
Disappointed, yes.
Disappointed that she was going to stay with her husband.
I had mixed feelings.
And Julie Jensen left Dean Witter right after this weekend.
That's to my recollection, yes.
And she didn't tell you she was leaving.
No, she did not.
Someone else told you that she had already left.
I eventually found out, yes, she left.
By someone else.
Yes.
And that was within a day or two after that weekend.
No.
How long was it?
It was a couple weeks, I believe.
So after a day or two, she tells you that she doesn't want you to contact her anymore.
I don't remember exactly when she said it.
I thought you testified under direct that it was 1 or 2 days later that she told you that she didn't want to continue the relationship.
It could have been 1 or 2 days. I don't remember the exactly 1 or 2 days.
It was shortly after that
Shortly
weekend.
afterwards is better.
I want to talk to you about the time between 1992 and 1997.
Okay.
You had moved from Illinois.
Yes,
You had moved to North Carolina.
correct.
But your contact with Illinois didn't stop.
That's correct.
You continued to have and come back to Illinois.
Yes,
You had a daughter in Illinois.
correct.
You had a sister in Illinois.
Yes,
Your parents were living in Illinois.
correct.
So it'd be fair to say a couple of times a year you would come back to Illinois.
Correct.
And sometimes it would be more depending on what was going on with your daughter.
No,
Never more than 2 times a year.
it would be 2 or 3 times a year,
Okay.
but never more than 1 or 2 days.
That's not what I asked, sir. I asked
Okay.
about times.
And then I misheard you.
Okay. So it's possible, depending on what was going on with your daughter, you would come back more than 1 or 2 times a year.
More than likely, at the most 3, at the most.
Now, you knew Julie Jensen through working at Dean Witter,
Correct.
and you knew that Julie actually studied for and received her Series 7's broker license.
I knew Julie was registered in order to take orders, yes.
And you need a Series 7 broker's license in order to take orders.
That is correct.
Now, you knew after talking to Julie Jensen during this friendship that Mark Jensen was also a stockbroker.
Yes.
You talk about your families,
Did we talk? Yes, we talked about our families.
talk about your children.
Correct.
And you talked about where Mr. Jensen worked.
No,
So you didn't know that he was working as a stockbroker?
I knew he was working as a stockbroker. We didn't talk about Mark.
So you had testified on direct that Julie had told you that Mark was weird and odd or strange. So
Correct.
you did talk about Mark.
She volunteered that. I didn't ask.
I didn't ask if you asked, sir. I asked if you talked about him.
That was basically it. I didn't want to hear about Mark.
But she did offer
She did offer
information.
this. Yes, she did.
Now, in January of 1992, you received a call from someone in the Pleasant Prairie Police Department.
Give me the date again, please.
Sometime in January of 1992.
I'm somewhere in January 1992.
He would have called you about
Yes.
whether you had been making calls or
Okay.
leaving letters, correct?
Okay. Okay.
Do you remember that?
Not really.
Do you remember talking to a law enforcement officer on the phone about letters and phone calls?
I remember when I was down in North Carolina, okay, getting phone calls. I don't remember any phone call from in January.
In January of 1992 is when you sent that letter to Julie Jensen.
Correct.
And that was after she had asked you not to contact her.
I sent the letter.
After she had asked you not to contact her.
Correct.
And the letter wasn't the only thing you had sent to her. You also sent a Christmas card.
Yes.
And you received this call from the Pleasant Prairie police officer who was upset that you had lied to him about contacting Julie Jensen.
Okay, let's go. No,
You didn't receive that call
I
from
received-
Sergeant Hunter?
I don't remember a call from Hunter. I think maybe in January. I don't recall that call. Okay, I recall. I don't remember when I received the call from him.
Do you remember Sergeant Hunter being angry at you because you had lied to him about whether you had contacted Julie Jensen?
I did not lie.
Do you remember that that's what Detective Hunter said to you, or Sergeant Hunter said to you?
Objections hearsay, Your Honor. He said he didn't lie.
Sustain.
Sir, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 59.
Okay.
Do you recognize that, sir?
Actually, I don't.
You don't remember receiving that in the mail?
I don't remember receiving it. No.
You don't
I don't.
remember receiving a harassment ticket?
No.
Do you remember testifying about the harassment ticket?
Yes, I do, but I don't remember receiving it.
So you don't ever remember receiving this ticket in the mail from
I-
Sergeant Hunter for harassment?
I remember receiving a citation. Okay, I don't remember what it looked like or what it was. Since I didn't do anything, since I didn't contact her.
So your testimony today is that you didn't contact her.
My definition of contact, okay, the definition that is in the dictionary is physically going to see. I sent a letter to her sister-in-law. That's what I did.
You also sent a Christmas card to her.
Oh, the Christmas card was the letter.
And this citation that you received from the Pleasant Prairie Police Department was for harassment.
Okay,
And it was issued to you on January 14th of 1992,
okay,
8 days after you had sent the letter to Julie Jensen.
all right.
In January of 2008, you were subpoenaed to testify in a hearing in Kenosha County.
Okay.
Is that true?
I couldn't tell you.
You don't
one way or
remember
the other.
testifying?
Pardon me?
You don't remember testifying?
Ask the question once more time, please.
In January of 2008, you were subpoenaed to testify in a hearing in Kenosha County.
2008.
It was actually in Walworth County.
Oh, okay, yes.
And at that time, you knew there was a warrant out for your arrest.
I didn't know. I questioned it.
You asked the prosecution if there
Yes.
was a warrant out for your arrest.
Yes,
Because you had never paid that harassment citation.
that is correct.
And they told you that they would look into it.
Yes,
And they told you not to worry about it.
yes.
And that it would be taken care of.
They didn't tell me that it would be taken care of. They said they would look at it. Okay. That's basically it.
I'm going
I
to
didn't know the outcome.
refer counsel to the the transcript from January 24th, 2008.
Page number.
I believe it's 91 of 130. One of 130.
Yeah, my page number starts at 188. So.
22.
222.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe that's not the one, sorry.
$222. What line?
Through 6. Mr. Tarica, you testified on January 24th, 2008.
I would imagine I don't have the timeline in
Get
front
back
of me.
closer to the microphone.
I do not have the timeline in front of me, but if you say I was testified, I testified.
And you were asked about this outstanding warrant.
Okay.
And your testimony was, I told them I thought there was a warrant still outstanding for it. The court asked you, what were you told? And you answered, they said they'd look into it and it would be taken care of.
All right. If that's what I testified, my memory was better then.
Right.
Regarding it.
And you understood that mean that they would take care of the warrant.
Mhm. I made them aware of the warrant.
And they said to you they would look into it and it would be taken care of.
I still don't know what the disposition of that was.
You weren't arrested.
That's correct.
You didn't pay the citation.
That's correct.
I want to talk to you a little bit about this tape recorder incident that you testified to from 1991 or 1992.
Fine.
You said that you were in the home and it was that Saturday,
I believe it was Saturday.
and Julie Jensen went to the garage.
Yes.
And was there a phone in the garage?
No. I couldn't tell you if there was a phone or not.
And then she came back in with a tape recorder.
Correct.
And she said, look what I found, or Mark's been recording my messages.
Correct.
And was it like a handheld tape recorder?
Yeah, it was a small tape recorder.
Was it like a mini cassette?
I don't know if it was a mini one or if it was, it was a small recorder.
Was it the type of cassette that you'd find in an answering machine?
No.
So it was different than a cassette you would find in an answering machine.
Yes.
And how was it different?
As I said, it was a small recorder and it was a tape recorder.
So the handheld tape recorder is not what I'm asking about. I'm asking about that tape cassette. Is it the type that you would find in an answering machine?
I do not believe so. I believe it was a regular one about this big.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to observe their answering machine?
No.
And the message that you heard on the tape was like a message that had been left.
Yes. It was a tape recorder machine. It's about yay big. The tape was about yay big.
Thank you, sir. Now, you talked a little bit about the calls that you had a conversation with your boss at Dean Whittaker.
Yes.
And you testified that they had looked at your phone records.
Correct.
And those were your work phone records.
Yes.
And it'd be fair to say that from 1992 to 1997, you were out of the area.
Yes,
You didn't live in Kenosha.
that's correct.
You didn't live in Racine.
Correct.
You were always outside of the state.
Always.
Now, this weekend that you spent with Julie Jensen, that wasn't the only weekend that that wasn't the only time you actually spent with her son.
That's correct.
You had other meetings with Julie Jensen that her son was present for.
There were play dates
Play dates between her child and your child.
and others.
At your house?
No,
At her house?
no.
Now, you testified that at first you and Julie were friends,
Correct.
and that friendship grew.
Correct.
And it grew as you talked about your friends and families
And children.
and children. You discussed your brothers and sisters.
We discussed family. I think it was that weekend.
And she told you about her mother.
She briefly touched on it.
She talked about her mother being an alcoholic.
She briefly touched on it. She didn't go into great detail.
And in that packet from the letters that you sent to her, you actually sent her an article about being a child of an alcoholic mother.
Correct.
She also talked to you about who her brothers were.
Yes.
And that's how you knew where Jill Griffin lived in order to send those letters.
Yes.
She told you that her marriage was failing.
She was unhappy.
And you talked to her about how you were unhappy and your marriage was failing.
My marriage was going through a divorce.
And at some point, you talked to her about that.
Yes.
And you actually took her to your divorce lawyer.
Once.
One time you took her to your divorce lawyer.
Once. Yes.
And at some point, she filed for divorce.
I found out afterwards. Yes.
You found out afterwards that she had filed for divorce?
I found out after 1999 or something like that. I didn't know that she filed for divorce while we were seeing each other,
Because
or
she
even after until the trial.
because she had cut off all contact with you
That is correct.
after that weekend.
Yes.
Nothing further. Thank you, sir.
Anything from the state?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Directing your attention, I'm going to put that previous testimony in context. So directing court and counsel's attention to page 222, line 2. This was already read to you. The witness, I told them I thought there was a warrant still outstanding for it. The court, what were you told? The witness, they said they'd look into it and it would be taken care of. That's the question and answer you gave in 2008, correct?
Correct.
And then,
Judge, is there a question?
He's
Are we
trying to
just reading
clarify
from-
what you crossed on. You
Okay.
can get into that.
I don't have any problem with him getting into it. I just think we should ask Mr. Tarica questions.
I did ask him a question, he gave an answer.
Let's,
I only read from the transcript when he gave
the
a
question
different-
is allowable. You got into it
I don't have any
very
problem with,
deeply.
I don't have any problem with
So
the
don't
question.
object to what he's trying to do with this witness.
May I continue?
Go ahead,
So,
Mr. Jones.
The question was posed, witness, they said they'd look into it and it would be taken care of. Mr. Elby, thank you, Judge. Question, have you been told that it had been taken care of? Answer, no. Question, but that's your understanding. Answer, sir, I don't know. So when you were asked about it back then, you didn't know either, did you?
That's correct.
So your testimony then is consistent with your testimony now.
That's correct. I still don't know the disposition.
Now, let's talk about this harassment citation that you received from Sergeant Hunter. Did you ever harass Julie Jensen?
Absolutely not. I
And
loved her.
This letter that you sent to her, it had your return address in the upper left-hand corner, correct?
Correct.
And it contained a Christmas card.
Correct.
And that wasn't harassing, was it?
No.
And then it contained, I don't know, an article about a sleeping cat feels the nudge of reality. I don't know why you sent that, but that was in there.
You
And
know,
that wasn't harassment, was it?
no.
And then there was some cartoons that you added, Ziggy cartoons. And then another article, where do nice guys and gals really finish? That was included in there, correct?
Yes.
None of that was harassing, was it?
I didn't believe so. No.
And this entire letter that you sent to her, which starts out, Dearest Julie, that wasn't harassment either, was it?
No.
Which is why you never, ever entered a plea of guilty or no contest to a charge of harassment that was issued against you by Officer Hunter.
That is absolutely correct.
Because you didn't harass Julie Jensen.
That is absolutely correct.
And after Julie Jensen told you that she was breaking off the relationship, you never had any further contact with Julie besides this letter. Is that true?
That is absolutely correct. I respected her.
You never sent any letters to her besides this one?
None.
You never left any penis photos around her house or around her husband's place of business?
No.
Judge, I didn't go into that on cross.
You questioned him that maybe he was back in Illinois for periods of time. So this is all allowable. All
You
your
never-
inferences that you said to him. So go ahead, Mr. Jamboys.
You never made any harassing or hang up phone calls to Julie Jensen or Mark Jensen?
Absolutely not.
No further questions.
Cross.
Thank you. Ms. Jensen asked you not to contact her, correct, after she broke off the relationship?
Correct.
You did contact her by mail.
I sent Julie a card and a letter
In the mail.
in via her sister-in-law
In the mail.
in the mail.
Thank you. And after that, you received a call from the Pleasant Prairie Police Department.
Objection. This has been asked and answered. It wasn't.
We got back into the harassment issue, so I'll give her some leeway here.
Your definition of contact is different than mine. I sent the letter.
Sir, that's not what I
received-
asked you. I asked you if you received a
let him
telephone
finish.
call. From,
Hey, hang on. Let him finish. He was trying to finish. Don't interrupt him. I know you don't like the answer, but let him finish.
Judge, I have no problem with the answer. That's not the question I asked.
But
So
you
I would move to-
interrupted him, and you're interrupting me. So let him finish the answer, and then you could say, that's not what I asked you.
I forgot the question.
The question was, and after you had sent the letter, you received a phone call from the Pleasant Prairie Police Department.
I don't remember the phone call, but obviously I did get it. Okay. And go ahead.
And after you spoke to Sergeant Hunter, you received a harassment citation in the mail.
Like I said, yes,
And you didn't enter a not guilty plea to that citation.
I didn't go up. No,
You didn't send a letter disputing the claim.
no.
It turned into a warrant.
I don't know if there was a warrant or not. Okay.
You were concerned that it was a warrant.
Correct.
And at no point were you arrested on the warrant.
No,
And at no point did you pay any citation.
I did not pay any citation. No.
And it was your understanding that the prosecution was going to look into it and take care of it.
Take care of it.
I'm not asking what that means, but that was your understanding.
They would look into it. You know, as far as take care of it, I would hope that they would take care of it. Okay. But, you know, my testimony in, can I go on, Judge? My testimony in court wasn't predicated on that. I called when I heard on the radio what had happened. I called the DA's office and made myself available.
Judge, I would move to strike as unresponsive.
Objection. It was responsive.
It's going to stay in the record. And we're kind of beating this issue way too much. So you want to continue? Go ahead.
I don't want to continue, Judge, but when I ask a question and there's a bunch of extra stuff about him contacting the DA's office that I did not ask, I'd move to strike that as unresponsive.
And I
We were
object.
talking-
I object. I thought his response was a fair response to her question.
I agree, it'll stay part of the record. Let's continue.
So at some point you contacted the DA's office after you found out about Julie Jensen's death?
Yes, I heard it on the radio.
And do you remember who you spoke to?
In the DA's office?
Yes.
No.
Did you give them a statement as to what you remembered?
I left my name and phone number and you know, I don't remember. I would imagine they called me back, but I know I remember that when I heard it on the radio, what had happened to Julie, I called the Kenosha DA and made myself available.
And after you called the Kenosha DA and made yourself available, do you remember if they called you back?
That would be the only way. Yes, yes.
And it was when they called you back that you asked them about the warrant? Or you just talked to them about Julie Jensen?
I could not tell you, but it wasn't about the warrant. It would have been about Julie Jensen. And then the only time I would have mentioned the warrant if I had to come up to Wisconsin, because I wasn't coming up to, I never came up to Wisconsin.
So the only time you mentioned the warrant to the DA's office was when they subpoenaed you to testify in court.
Yes.
Now, when you talked to the DA's office after Julie Jensen's death, did you tell them what you knew about Julie Jensen?
When I told them, what did I tell them? Please, would you?
Did you tell them what you knew about Julie Jensen?
They would have asked me, you know, when I told them I wanted to help, they would have asked me. It's 30 years ago.
Right.
Okay. But they would have asked me what I knew, or they would have had questions. So they would have asked me.
And you would have answered those questions?
Absolutely.
And it was just to the DA's office, not to law enforcement?
I didn't talk to law enforcement. Okay. Other than when they called me twice in North Carolina.
Okay, nothing further, sir. Thank you.
All right, we're done with this witness.
We are, Your Honor. I don't have any questions. This
We're done with this witness. I'll say it again. You can go, sir.